Hi, welcome to today's notes. I have a couple of riddles to start our notes off today. Why don't we start with this one? How can you carry water in a net? You freeze it. What kind of bow is impossible to tie? A rainbow. And what is one thing you can never catch? A breeze. Alrighty. Go ahead and try that out on someone, see if they can come up with it. Anyway, getting back into these notes. These notes are called literal equations and rewriting formulas. I have just a little bit of information that we are going to be using, some common formulas and rewriting them. These variables are literal equations because they contain two or more variables, and we're solving for one of the many variables in this. So kind of the key thing is to remember the inverse operations to solve for the variable. All these multi-steps that we've been doing up until this point, we're going to be using those strategies to solve for the indicated variable. Okay? So let's go ahead and start with number one. So for number one, we're solving for x. We have x, so we're just focusing on what's on that side of the equal sign. We see that we have a minus 5. So we're going to do the inverse, which is to add 5 to both sides. When I do that, I have x is equal to, and then I just write down what I have all in the same line. So y plus 5. Next, we're going to solve for r. And so again, what's on that side of the equal sign is 2 times pi times r. Well, the inverse of multiplying is to divide. And so I'll go ahead and divide on both sides. So then I get r by itself. And on the other side, I just write down what I see. I have c divided by 2 pi. Okay, and that's how we could solve for the radius when given the circumference. So for number 3, what I have here is we're solving for f. We're going to use some of those strategies from the fraction equations to eliminate fractions when we have to deal with it. So I'm going to start, my very first step is going to be to multiply the entire equation by 2. And when I do that, the 1/2 does cancel out on the right side, but then I get 2d on the left is equal to f. K. Again, we're solving for f. So to get f by itself, I do the inverse of f times k, which is to divide. Then I have f is equal to 2d divided by k. Okay. So with number 3, now required 2 steps. You'll see that for number 4, same thing, 2 steps. Some of them it will be more than just 2 steps. So this one we're solving for x. So remember that we have to move any non-variable terms to the other side. X is going to be considered the variable term because that's what we're solving for. So I'm going to subtract 4y from both sides. So I have 3x is equal to 5 minus 4y. Then I'm going to solve for x by dividing by 3. I have x is equal to 5 minus 4y divided by 3. Okay. So number 5 is similar. We're solving for r. Okay. So to get r by itself, I'm going to move the ax to the other side first, and then the inverse operation to do that, minus ax from both sides. I get negative r is equal to 7 minus ax. Then we're solving for a positive r, not a negative r, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. I get the positive r. On the other side, I'm not going to leave it like this. It's very messy when you have the negative 1. We're going to use that distributive over division to simplify. So 7 divided by negative 1 is negative 7. Negative ax divided by negative 1 is a positive ax. Okay, so again, we're using distributive over division to simplify when we can. Okay. Number 6. On number 6, what I have here is a proportion. So we're going to again use the strategy of proportions to solve. So I'm going to cross multiply. So a times d is equal to C times B. Yeah, I am going to leave it as CB. We're solving for C, so to get C by itself, I have C times B. So I'm going to divide. That's the inverse operation. I have a fly flying around here, so that's what you see every once in a while, and while I'm shaking my hand away, look, it's on my pencil. Oh, it flew away. Anyway, I have AD divided by B. Okay. So again, remember, as we are doing these problems, your focus is what variable you're solving for. Okay, and that's what you're going to focus on. Kind of don't worry about what's going on the other side. On the other side, we are just going to focus on writing it neat and organized. So number seven is another proportion problem. Move this up a little bit. And so I'm going to start by cross multiplying to eliminate these fractions. Or you can just think about, I'm going to multiply the entire equation to again eliminate fractions. Whenever we deal with fractions, that will be our first step. So we get ax plus 1 is equal to 2b. To keep solving for x, this is kind of one of like the strategy for the two-step equation. So I subtract 1 from both sides. I get ax is equal to 2b minus 1. And the last step to solve for x, I have a times x. The inverse is to divide. I get x is equal to 2b minus 1 over a. So number 8 and number 9, these also have fractions. Number 8, you can think of number 8 like we did number 6, where it's a proportion we cross multiply, or you can think of it as those fraction equations that we've worked with where we have to eliminate the denominator. Okay, get rid of those fractions in those fraction equations. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by v. Okay, when I do that, I get dv is equal to m. Okay, my goal is to solve for v, so I'm going to divide both sides by d, and I have v is equal to m divided by d. Okay, so again, your goal is to eliminate those fractions, get rid of fractions first. The other thing too is we were solving for v. V right now is a denominator, and so that tells me that it's part of a fraction. We're not solving for part of a fraction. We have to solve for it as a whole number. So another reason that we have to multiply both sides by v to eliminate those fractions. Okay. Number 9, we'll do that the next time I see you in class. Okay, let's go ahead and flip it over, and we'll do number 10. Number 10 is, again, it's going to be multi-steps to solve for that indicated variable. This time it's n. And so again, we're going to have to follow some strategies with our previous multi-step equations to isolate that variable. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to try and get this messy fraction by itself on one side of the equal sign first. So I'm going to subtract 50 from both sides. When I do that, I get t minus 50 is equal to n minus 40 over 4. So this is another example where we can do a proportion. We can solve by a proportion, cross multiply, or multiply both sides by 4. So on number 8, I multiplied both sides by v. This time I'm going to cross multiply. But again, both strategies work on both those problems. When I cross multiply, it's going to be 4 times t minus 50 is equal to n minus 40. I would put this over 1, and 1 times n minus 40 remains n minus 40. To keep solving for n, the inverse operation is to add 40 to both sides. Then my final answer, n, is equal to 40 plus 4 parentheses t minus 50. Okay? And then we'll do number 11. This will be our last one for the notes today, and then we'll just practice more in class. So for number 11, we're solving for L, okay? If you didn't know, this is a surface area formula for a cube, a 3D object. Notice that L is in two of the terms. So we're going to, again, try and isolate these terms. So I'm going to move the 2WH to the other side. When I do that, I have S minus 2WH is equal to 2LW plus 2LH. Now I have to try and pull that L out of the two terms, and I'm going to remember distributive property. So I'm going to pull that L out, and I have 2W plus 2H. So remember I just mentioned distributive property. If I would take that L and distribute it, this is what it would look like. Okay, so we can go use distributive property just in the opposite direction. So I'm just going to write in here distributive property. I have this pesky fly. It will not leave me alone. Oh, I wish I had a fly swat. So anyway, you will have to do that, and then you'll see that for 12-13 we'll practice more of this reverse distributive property. This reverse distributive property actually has a name called factoring, but we won't get really into that until January and February. So anyway, we pulled out that L, the reverse distributive property, and then we have 2W minus H on the other side. We just dropped it down. Now to isolate L, this should be easy. I have L times that quantity. So the inverse, I'm going to divide both sides by that quantity. And so my final answer, L is equal to S minus 2WH divided by 2W plus 2H. Okay? So before I end these notes, I just want to quickly mention that literal equations is one of the more challenging equations that we have to work with this year. It just really studying those strategies. That's why I talked about them so much when we did those multi-step equations. So use those strategies to your advantage. And I can't stress enough, if you need any extra help, please talk to me. We can set up some time to meet, or we can try and do things through email, whatever, but please try and get that help if you need it. All right, thank you. See you guys next time.